Okay, what I'm going to show you today, this is door jamb material. Got to be, everything's already cut out for an exterior door, and that's what we built this frame out of. And so I'm going to give you a quick rundown on what we did, where you don't have to try to mill all this down. Okay, this is what I'm going to show you. The only thing you have to do is you have to rip this down, because you're depending on the size of your window. In other words, is it 1.5 inches or 1 3/4? If it's an 1 3/4 thick window, this is already set up, so you don't have to do anything. This is ready to go. If you build it out of some 1.5 by whatever, then yeah, you'll have to cut this down a 1/4 inch. So let's move on. Since this one is together, I'm going to take it apart and show you what I've done. Like I say, since this is for an 1 3/4 door, it would be 2 3/8. But since I'm doing an 1.5 door, it's only 2 inches. So you have to cut off the amount, because 1.5 and then your weather strip, which is between 3/8 and 1/2, would make up the difference. So you wouldn't want it too tight. It'd be too hard to close the window. Anyway, we got this. We have your window. It should be around between 3/16 to 1/4 overall, so that you got an 1/8 here and an 1/8 at this end over here, overhang. The jamb's going to be 1/8 of an inch overhang, so an 1/8 on this other side. That would be the top and the bottom. Bottom piece is going to be exactly the same size as the top piece. The only difference is this bottom piece, we cut off this inside here down to where the weather strip goes, because from here your window is going to come all the way to the bottom of this, and then this is going to be your sill, which will be the sill which will be run out. That's the one that where the rain hits and runs off. So now we've got those two. This is a little bit more difficult. This is the same cut, but what you need, and this is where your math is going to have to come in. This is side to side, from the right side to the left side. This would be your top header. Okay, down to the bottom jamb, we've got about an 1/8 of an inch clearance, because at the top we want an 1/8, top we want 1/8 inch clearance, bottom we want an 1/8 inch clearance, 1/4 inch overall. So once you get those two established from your window, okay, so from the top header piece to the bottom piece, I've got 28 inches. The overall of your jamb sides, it's 28 inches. That's going to give you 1/8 at the top, 1/8 at the bottom. So that's this. But now we have to cut out, you have to rabbet out this area right here for the top and the bottom. So I'm going to set the saw up. I mean, you can use whatever you want to. I always just use a table saw, because I can get the right depth. And then we'll cut out these two here. This is what it's going to look like. See, this is going to come out flush at the top, and you can see the inside down there at the other end is right there. And what you've got, where these two line up and match, so that you've got your right dimension. So that's why we have to cut this. This is why we have to cut this area out, and we have to do it at the bottom and the top. And then of course after we get through, then we're going to drill some holes to put our screws in. Now you can use nails or you can use screws. I always use screws in case I have to make an adjustment somewhere. Now I'm going to set up my blade. I misplaced my cross feed guide on this thing, so don't do it unless you've got a cross feed. But what you're trying to do, you're setting this blade up to where you have this depth right here, which is 1/2 inch, and then you want to come back the thickness of your top and bottom piece, which is 1.25 inches. So that's what you're looking for, so that this is coming back 1.25 inches. It should come out flush here. But what you do is, once you get this established, which is, okay, I've got the blade up the right height, and then what we're going to do is we're going to run across each time so that we cut a bunch of kerfs out of there, and then we can clean them up here. But first, now we need to get the back set. And so with your cross feed, and you want to come through and you want to cut this, and then after you get through, then you can either come in and clean it up this way, or you can just take a hammer and chisel and clean out and gouge out all the stuff that you need out of the way. You can make a mistake, but you can always, if you go too deep, you can always put a piece of shim in there. It's not that critical, because nobody's going to see the gap anyway. Now, if you make a 1/4 inch deeper, then yeah, you got a problem. You're going to have to just make a new one. So you want to be careful and do a little bit at a time. We're going to make us a sill that goes under here. That's going to be at an angle so that it'll shed water. That's the reason that this is cut off. Here's our sill. The first thing you want to do is you want to make sure from the inside edge to at least a 1/2 inch back from the sill. Like in this case, we want 4 inches. I'm just going to say 4 inches about. That way I can put a 1x4 on here and have a 1/2 inch left here. This is going to come back about, that's about 1/8 of an inch. That way we got a good caulk line. Then we're going to go down and touch our sill, and then we won't, you know, it doesn't have to be, you don't need a magic number. It can be 1/2 inch overhang. It can be flush. I mean, it's whatever you want, of what you want. Most of the time I like to do with just a little bit left over, because these boards, they shrink, and it might not be, you know, within the first year, but they do shrink, and you don't want it to get past your 1x. So anyway, you just leave it over enough, and that way when you nail it on here, it's going to come out right. But now what we need is from this point, from the south side point to the close to the inside of our bottom jamb, we need about a 10 to 15 degree angle. So doesn't have to be exact. Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention, when you've got this piece, you want to determine if you want this piece flush or if you want to leave a little bit of reveal for caulking. I'll leave that up to you. Anyway, so we come down here. So we come from outside to here, and we need about a 10 to 15 degree. Now it doesn't have to come all the way. You can, as long as you don't come over past where the window is. You know, if your table saw is good at 3 inches, just do 3 inches. So, but this mark here is right at 3 inches, which I know we're not going to get 3 inches. So we're going to come out to about 2.5, like this. So starting from about right here, starting from right there, we're going to come out something like that, so that whatever water gets in here, it won't wick back up into the window itself. It'll shed it pretty quick. This is our angle cut. I cut it a little bit too far down, but that's okay. We're not going to use that sill anyway. But anyway, what's going to happen now, this is going to come down, and that's going to touch the sill. Now if you do have a little area here, it's just going to be such a small caulk area that prime it first and then caulk it up really good. Don't caulk it up before you prime it. And now you can see the distance. I mean, like I said, I'm not going to use this sill, but anyway, you can see the distance in there so that rainwater can't sit in there. Now, the word about insulating, here's your weather strip way up here. So we're not even close to the sill itself. So really, this thing's ready to go.